Everyone, welcome to this edition of the Cashflow Chronicles. As you all know, I am the local representative here in Michigan for trade credit insurance, which focuses specifically in AR and ultimately cash flow, given the title of this web series. Exciting one today. So I have someone on the opposite of AR on AP, Matt Cannon. Matt, nice to meet you, man.
Nice to meet you, Matt. Good talking with you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, great. I appreciate that so much. And funny story about how Matt and I met. You see, he's got a nice little polo on there titled a Ram Tool. I know you have some history there in the Detroit market, right?
Oh, yeah, certainly do. Although these guys are more local, they're down here in the northwestern Pennsylvania area in the former, or I guess still tool and die capital of the world. Although I know you
Yeah,
Michigan guys like to refute that, but
lots of changes going on here in the Midwest in manufacturing. I think we can all agree on that. And there's a lot of pride in manufacturing, but the world is changing, especially right now, right, Matt?
no doubt, no doubt. All you got to do is look at a newspaper for about 5 seconds and you have everybody running for the doors.
So I guess that digs into the first question I have for you. And you've been in the industry for quite a while, correct? What is it? How
Yes, sir.
long would it be
Well,
in
actually, I've
total?
been in now for a little over 2 years in the AP
Okay.
side.
Okay. Where were you before?
Actually had some experience in the tool and die business. I was the sales, purchasing, and logistics manager for a company up in Erie, Pennsylvania. I did that for a little over a decade. Prior to that, I owned a company called Cana Financial Resources. Was in the finance end of things for a little over a decade before that all crashed and burned in 2008, as I'm sure we're all well aware. Did a little bit of commercial finance, did some residential finance, did a variety of things, but that's really kind of got me to where I am today. I like to fancy myself, and I think my best skill really is a problem solver. Part of the deal in the finance that set me aside from the banks was that I was able to tear into the details of a situation and actually find the details that led me to an ultimate solution. So basically, if anybody had a problem that they couldn't handle in the conventional sense, or the banks had a problem with working out details, or a company was having some financial difficulties, I got the phone call. It was kind of my claim to fame, and it's something I take a lot of pride in, is that I'm pretty good at solving problems.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. We've seen kind of a trend towards more line item financing with some banks as far as let's systemize the process and having a personalized approach. Having people that can take that approach is super critical relative to what I do and what you do. I think we both carry that mindset. But I'm here for solutions based. It's with me, or I have other people that can help you out with what you're trying to get, whether it be AR or HR, say anything from a finance standpoint. I think we're all well connected, and the goal is really to get you in touch with individuals that you can make your best decision on from people that are well vetted.
Absolutely.
So I guess to that point, given everything taking place here, we've seen a lot of rapid advancements in automation across the industries. Obviously, AI being a big buzzword right now. It comes up every time I do one of these. What does the next 5 to 10 years look like for AP automation, in your opinion?
Growth. I've seen studies that go across the board, but they all indicate significant growth. The most recent study I took a look at, it's basically a $5 billion industry today. They're estimating by 2032, it's going to be a $17 billion industry. So you're looking at tripling and then some inside the next decade. And of course, that's
Okay.
driven by the demand for digital transformation. I mean, everybody's trying to, excuse me, cut the cord away from paper, if you will, to try and get more streamlined, with the cloud storage solutions that are out there. It refines and makes the organizational efforts so much more succinct and so much more easy to control. Obviously, as you mentioned, AI is a big driver of this. As that technology evolves and large language models become more involved in day to day operations, we're finding more and more uses and effective uses of AI as that goes. And then I think really just the fact that you can put into place a system that is repeatable, that's easier to train than going through a long, elongated process you may have now that's more manual, that requires a lot more inputs from staff. Whereas now you have it in a confined space, if you will, that's easy to follow. Everybody gets a hold of it. It's easier to pass along.
Yeah, I do appreciate that quite a bit. I think one thing that's I've been seeing a lot of, and I think you can agree, it's the fraud that happens too, whether it be it's interesting. I look at invoices that are sent out from my clients, and some of those invoices, like there could be some fraudulent type activities. Maybe an AP automated system doesn't recognize that, and perhaps a fraudulent actor could come in there and potentially manipulate things, or could do some research and say, hey, here's what most invoices look like. Do you have any thoughts on that as far as relative
Yeah,
to?
actually, that's something that's, believe it or not, more and more common. A lot of things in the way on the fraud side of things, companies are seeing smaller invoices that come in. Somebody manages to find an email for their AP or something to that effect, and they'll send an email in and with an invoice, and it's small enough that nobody really looks at it. It's under a threshold that somebody has to sign off on it, say it's $150 or whatever. But this goes on, once or twice a quarter, and people are just paying this invoice because they just assume it's a realistic invoice when in fact it's not. And that's one of the things that, the solution that I bring does enable with the AI. If you don't have that vendor set up in your ERP system, it'll call it out immediately. So ding ding ding, red flag, time to go look, is this real?
So with this system, is this something that you've built yourself, or is it predominantly a partnership with other providers?
It is a partnership with a single provider. The
Okay.
company is actually based out of Florida. They started out, they were kind of at the forefront of electronic payment. They started out big on the ACH side of things. And then as the evolution to virtual card came along, they were really the pioneer on stateside as to what all that entailed and brought that to market. So from there, they experienced some rather significant growth, caught some eyeballs, if you will, and a much larger outfit came in from overseas and purchased them. So now they are a publicly traded company. They kind of act as a U.S. subsidiary, if you will, of this French company. So they have a lot more dollars backing them now. They're in a lot stronger financial position. That enabled them to go out and actually purchased the what we call basically the invoice automation side, because they'd had a build out a platform for electronic payment of your invoices. However, they were missing that component of, okay, if we're going to do that, why don't we bring in something that is basically front to back total automation solution on the AP side? And so over the course of the last 3 years, and obviously with the financial backing that they have now, we're able to build out probably what, well, without a doubt, is, in my opinion, the best in class solution that's on the market.
That's awesome. And I think with technology too, having a platform that other parties are investing in really does recognize how it is a viable solution, that yeah, extra parties see the value in it and they're gonna give money appropriately. So one thing that's really big is obviously ERPs. It seems like the ERP is the brains. It is the brains of an organization. So I know us here, we have systems with an AR and credit tracking that with APIs pair up with ERPs pretty seamlessly. Would you say that's a somewhat similar approach you do from an AP standpoint?
It is. Most of the larger ERPs that everybody's familiar with, the SAPs, the Oracles. Well, obviously, SAP is kind of trying to move away from anybody outside of their organization plugging in, if you will. But Oracle, NetSuite, Infor, most of the big names, we already have preferred integrated integration partner. So there is an existing API structure there for us to basically tag in, if you will. But we are proud to consider ourselves ERP agnostic. And what that means is that we have a tech team on site that, regardless of what your ERP is, we can actually build in the plugin or by flat file protocol transfer, any one of a number of different ways, make the connection happen. So regardless of someone's ERP, we're still a viable solution on the AP side.
Cool. And just a matter, it's funny, APIs are so critical nowadays, and I talk APIs all the time. I still don't know what APIs stand for, but it's such a critical element. Let systems talk to fellow systems just to eliminate duplicative work and just save time. I think we're both in that business where time is money. And how can we
Absolutely.
streamline that process with accuracy? Another buzzword, I'm a nerd on this stuff. So, OCR versus intelligent data capture. I'm not sure if you want to explain the difference between the two of them, or
Oh,
would you like
that's
me
this
to?
is one of my favorites. This to me is really one of the most critical aspects of what I do. OCR has kind of been the status quo, if you will, since AP automation was even talked about. OCR is an old technology, if you will. It is a template-based application. So as you and I both know, looking at enough invoices coming across the desk, invoices come in a variety of situations. The OCR technology was originally devised to basically have a scanner sitting in the corner of your office. You got a paper invoice, whether it be you printed off an email or you pulled it out of an envelope and you scanned it. But once again, being template based, it could only recognize certain areas on the purchase order or on the invoice to pull information from. And it also has some issues with character recognition. So if you get into foreign languages, maybe a tilde mark or a different currency, it has real issues in processing that data. It's a longer setup time. It's a more antiquated technology. Whereas intelligent data capture is really at the forefront of new technology. It is almost designed for cloud-based applications. Basically, it enables you to take in data from any way it comes in, whether it's a digital format, whether it's a paper format. What makes it really unique is that it utilizes that AI to be able to glean information from anywhere on the invoice. Just to give you an example, I have a client that has multiple facilities, and on all the invoices, so they can track and pair it to said facility, they have a 5-digit numerical code that's attached. Well, every vendor puts that code in a different place. So fortunately, the intelligent data capture is intelligent enough to be able to go, okay, I see this is 0053 facility, and it will pull that information down. So when it has all that digitized, it's able to seamlessly deliver that into the ERP and associate it with said account in the accounting structure. It just makes for a much more seamless, much more effective transfer of data. And it allows you to basically get it more accurately because it's guaranteed 99.5% accurate. It pulls it down faster, more efficiently, and more accurately because of the fact it's better at character recognition as well.
So this may seem like common sense, but OCR, it's optical character recognition. So basically, if you scan like a PDF or you scan something else, it's going to pick certain characters that you tell it to pick on. So it's kind of pre-AI before AI. And with the intelligent data capture, it's even optimized from that standpoint. And this is me just speaking not as an AP professional, but just kind of a tech nerd. So I guess this is similar to both of our professions. People think, well, it works great. Why do I need to change? So what would be the difference from a value add standpoint going from that ACR or OCR to an actual IDC optimal data capture as
I
far
think
as
that's
from like a
pretty
cost?
I think that's a pretty simple explanation. You're getting more data more accurately and more efficiently. Isn't that kind of what we're all driving at the end of the day? If you're looking at AP automation, I mean, you can never have enough data to get it more accurately and eliminate the human component if that still exists. If you're using OCR, if you're not using OCR, I mean, I still see lots of companies today that are still having a team of folks that are opening envelopes and actually manually inputting that data from the invoice into the ERP. So you've got countless hours strung out doing that.
Think of it from a AR standpoint with your DSO, your day sales outstanding too. If like if people pays you incorrectly and things like that, just how long that's taking to get your valuable cash. And of course, the cash flow model, your cash out versus cash in, and those investments that take place. If you can just make it instantaneous from that standpoint, it's a huge value add from that standpoint.
And you can get a tremendous return on your DPO as well. You know, your days payable outstanding. If you're eliminating the manual process, if you're still doing that, how long does it sit in a pile before Matilda gets to it on Friday at 4 o'clock? And how willing is she to be paying attention to detail to the effect that you're not going to have an occasional human error in there because you'd rather waiting for the 5 o'clock bell as opposed to, down on what that specific detail set is.
And we're here recording on April 3rd, end of the month, and just the amount of financial professionals are, well, it's month end. They got to make sure everything's paid and all the different variables. They don't want to talk. Like I have a stack of this much pieces of paper I got to get through this today. I'm jealous that I don't have to do that. Well, granted, or any of those professionals, those are horrible days. Kind of like tax deadline for us CPAs. Deadlines are deadlines. So any way to really mimic that and get time back in the day for those professionals to focus on relationships, which I think is what we all want to do. So,
Sure.
um, so yeah. Now, I guess the biggest thing as far as this is another terminology. So AI versus machine learning relative to the AP space of things. What is the difference between the two? Specifically in the AP world.
I kind of pair them together, to be honest with you, because I'm looking at the end result. And the end result is what is going to make you more efficient and more effective in what you're trying to do. And in this circumstance, obviously, it's about making more accurate decisions. It's about getting more accurate data into the system to be able to make things happen in a more efficient manner. It's making your department more efficient. And whether that's through machine learning or AI, I kind of group them together because once again, the end result is X. You're getting what you're looking for. Whether it's AI, machine learning, it's the nomenclature to me is irrelevant. You're getting from point A to point B, and if it's many times it's a combination of the two. Whichever way works is the best for me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think that's a good point because if you're not like a data wizard or like a programmer or anything like that, well, there's machine learning, there's natural language processing, there's AI. It's all the same thing. And to us, it generally is. But the whole goal is how do we get time back in the day of professionals to make judgmental decisions? Let's eliminate those repetitive tasks. Same thing with credit checks for me. Like, how long does it take you to fill out a credit application, analyze it, call references, and things like that? It's true, like if it could just be done with you instantaneous with 100% accuracy, do you see value in that? So that's a really good point. Next thing I have here from an AP standpoint, this ties to both of us, is credit cards. I think the biggest thing is you look at like the traditional method of AR and AP versus going through a credit card standpoint. I understand when credit card makes more sense to some particular applications, but at the same time, how would you build on that as far as why the AP through automation makes much more sense than credit cards?
I guess there's a couple things. I mean, credit cards certainly have a place today. I mean, especially if you've got somebody, for instance, you've got a corporate account that you're sending a salesman out on the road. There are some electronic ways to get around that with something what we call Ghost Card, which is something that we're seeing a fair bit of use with. But really, I think the driver and what you're going to see the future of AP is in virtual card, where virtual card acts like a credit card but it has some built-in fraud mitigation protections. It enables, let's put it this way, any credit card transaction, whether it be a ghost card, a virtual card, a credit card that you have in your wallet, the piece of plastic has an interchange fee. That interchange fee is what the bank charges you will, if you will, to process it, whether it be Visa, MasterCard. We've all heard about it. There's actually some legislation in Congress they're trying to pass right now to mitigate some of those fee structures. And they're questioning some of the larger retailers, say for instance, Walmart, that negotiates their own fees based on their volume with specific card companies. So what happens is we actually, once again, are one of the largest issuers on the corporate side for this virtual card. That interchange fee that is charged to the buyer, to the person that's actually cashing the card, if you will, is where we create a pretty unique situation for our clients. Whereas the bank typically keeps all that and that's their bottom line. And that's why you see Visa and MasterCard with profit margins in excess of 50%. We actually refund a portion of that to our customer, realizing, hey, we need to make money. But on the same token, we're going to take those interchange fees and we're going to rebate them back to you. So at the end of the day, for many of my clients, it ends up being quite a nice payday for them. And it's kind of contrary to standard belief. And it goes against everything you thought about when it comes to accounts payable. Virtual card actually ends up making accounts payable a profit center.
Yeah, I think that's important when you look at all those processing fees that come into a credit card. It's pretty significant. And I think that's important. There's a number of providers out there that walk through the different variability behind the actual processing fees, but it adds up pretty significantly. And of course, if you go through AR and AP, there's some level of risk. So you prefer like the credit card standpoint, but what's that costing you? I think that's the biggest question mark from that standpoint. So there is value to it. It's a matter of taking the approach appropriately. You mentioned a ghost card, and this is specific to me too. It's you ever heard of the term ghost companies? It's a total opposite perspective to ghost companies, but have you heard that?
Yeah, I've heard of that. And it goes cards. It's not fake, obviously, but it's instead of having a piece of plastic in your wallet, it's a single issue from AP or AR's desk where they or AP's desk where they just hit a button and it's paid. So you go to log in your hotel, you can make the advanced reservation on that card, and as soon as they cash you out of the room, it's taken care of, and there's no plastic ever comes involved in the transaction.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Obviously, from my standpoint, ghost meaning these companies never exist. It's just some shell of a company that just comes out of thin air. To your point, with the card standpoint, no issues, just instant money from that standpoint. So it's a proactive approach to actually payment, where ours, my perspective is these fake companies are being proactive regarding the risk of selling to them. So definitely yours is on the secure side versus kind of a company that's a bit
Yeah, something
fishy.
that's not even real.
Yeah. There's a lot of them, surprisingly. The amount of fraud that happens is pretty ridiculous. Very frustrating, to be honest. Trust, the days of trust that were irrelevant 20 years ago, not the same as they used to be. So, what about those companies that prefer paper checks? Like, I just get a check in person. I process my payment. That's my preferred method to get it paid. I like to touch and feel money. What are your thoughts on that perspective for those individuals that manage their business that way?
Well, we look at it as like a viable, it's a necessary evil, if you will. We do some things to help folks with that. Obviously, there's an intrinsic cost in writing a check. You've got to buy your custom checks. You've got to spend the time stuffing an envelope, putting a stamp on it, et cetera. We typically save companies based on that cost structure about $2 a check because we have a third party company that will write those checks for you. So we can look at it that way. One of the really unique aspects, I think, of the platform from the payment side is that when your dashboard pops up, you actually have the ability from whether it's a AP clerk or CFO or controller, whoever's basically dictating when the bills go out, you can toggle on an individual transaction and vendor per basis how you want to pay them. Do you want to pay them with check? Do you want to pay them with ACH? Do you want to pay them with virtual card? And allows you to toggle on each and every individual transaction, whereas it sets up to a default. For instance, let's say we've already got somebody on virtual card, you're earning a rebate from it, that sets as a default. Okay, something happened or we needed an emergency shipment and they said, hey, look, in order for us to pull this off, we need funds via check, with an overnight, whatever the case may be, special circumstance. You can toggle out of that and actually issue the check from platform all the same. But checks are still with us today. A lot of localized vendors aren't going to be set up to accept a virtual card. The amount of legwork to set up an ACH for them on a maybe once a quarter biannual kind of usage doesn't really make a lot of sense. So checks are there. The important part is making sure when the invoice comes in and you go through the reconciliation process, that in fact it's a true and viable vendor and that you have them set up in the system and eliminate any potential fraud that may happen along those lines.
That's a really good point. The amount of banks discussing fraud and checks, it's unbelievable. It's like I've been doing business with him for 30 years. He always pays me a check, no concern. And then more than likely there could be a fraudulent check that these scammers found and they just duplicate and you cash it and they have access to your financials and things like that. So much like you said
Yeah,
with that small little $100 AP invoice that comes into play, it's
I actually
interesting.
saw a study the other day, Matt, that I thought you might find interesting. It's a company called Payments Intelligence. And their study found that 65% of companies still using checks have actually experienced some form of check fraud. 5%.
It's interesting. I was about to make a big poll on LinkedIn here as far as who has experienced fraud, just out of curiosity, because it's becoming more and more relevant, and they're getting smarter and smarter. You talk about AI. Unfortunately, AI can out AI existing AI, as we all know.
This is dueling AIs.
I mean, it's so competitive in that standpoint. Of course, the talk of Terminator and stuff like that, it seems to be more and more real sometimes. I guess the final question I have for you before final thoughts is can you share a case where the AP automation really isn't done well from like a leader, whether it be a CFO or a CEO, where they're like, I got a system in place, I'm in good shape, and then they come back to you later and they're like, well, that didn't work out as good as I expected. Is there any particular examples or like case studies you have in your profession?
I guess I'd go through a couple. Just I'll touch on two companies that I've dealt with here recently that come to mind in terms of some nightmare scenarios and just stuff that you just wouldn't think was really still existing in the marketplace. One was a healthcare system that had been growing so rapidly fast that they did not have the chance to really look at a system, put in place a system that made more sense to them. They were still doing manual data entry on all their invoices. The problem was that they had brought on so many new facilities, they had it coming in from every angle and literally showed me three office spaces that had bank boxes to the rafters with paper copies of invoices and purchase orders and all 9 yards. And they had been trying an OCR system. And the problem that they had encountered was that if it came in and the copy was slightly off askew, or maybe a rolled edge happened, they were missing data. It wasn't able to scan the data at all and transfer it. They had integration problems with getting what they could scan migrated into the ERP. So basically the whole thing went afoul. Obviously, with intelligent data capture, we were able to change that around pretty significantly. And now they have two new office spaces that they didn't have 6 months ago because they cleared out all the bank boxes. So that's an example where I guess it really was a win for them to come on board in a major kind of way, just strictly from operational efficiency, not talking about anything else in terms of what they got on the backside. Another one that amazes me to this day that we actually were fairly far along in the process, in the sales cycle, if you will. And we got down to the point where I had several decision makers obviously involved in the process. The CIO and the CFO and the COO were all on board with what I'd had to say. We'd had a number of meetings. We were actually down to nearing the proposal phase when they had a board meeting the day before we were supposed to deliver the proposal. And the chairman of the board decided that he still likes to sign checks. So despite and this is a 40+ million-dollar a year operation with facilities scattered as far west as Washington state, as far south as Florida. I mean, they're everywhere. So they were literally still having managers at site level collecting the month's bills, sending them into corporate, and then corporate was issuing checks to mail back out to all these different scattered vendors throughout the country. And he got enjoyment from actually sitting at his desk and signing the checks. And that is what upheld the deal.
Do you
It's
think
hard to
it's a
believe in
more
this
about
day and age that someone's still that related to checks, in my opinion, but I guess that's the case.
do you think it's more of like a control factor? Like this is my business, I control all the cash that leaves this operation from your perspective?
I think it could be. I think it's just the fact that, well, I don't know. I hate to stereotype, but the guy's just an old fashioned son of a gun. That's the way the company made itself. I have a lot of respect for that because they're a very well known, very well respected regional company. Well, regionally name wise here specifically, that they're very well respected. The fact that they're willing to undertake the amount of effort that it takes to still operate that way is kind of mind blowing, in my opinion. And the fact that I actually had a discussion on a side with the CIO at one point in time, they had actually had one facility that was without power for 3 days because of the amount of time it took them to collect the bill from the facility and turn around, process it, and then mail the check and get the check in their hands. They'd exceeded the late payment due date, and the services were cut off for 3 days, causing obviously mass confusion.
That's hard to believe. You'd think it's a pretty significant measure as far as reserves and things like that go. I think given the time we're in right now where cash is so critical for so many at the moment, like every individual dollar matters to the operation of a business. A lot of people are just scraping by with what they can get because it's just everyone's stretched so much. I think the issue both of us come across because when we talk to whether it be financial leaders, CFOs, CEOs, controllers, no one wants to take action right now because they're trying to hold on to every dollar they have, like I previously just mentioned. Why should they explore AP automation? I guess a similar approach as far as in my world with AR insurance. There's money to be made. Is that a safe assumption?
Sure. Well, I think there's a lot of operational efficiency to be gained as well. I mean, I like to tell folks that I'm talking to about this at the outset, I say, if I can digitize all your inbound invoice data and eliminate the manual data entry component entirely and do that with a guaranteed 99.5% accuracy, in turn, seamlessly migrate that data into your ERP. So once again, there's no data transfer or manual processes involved there. Then automate your purchase order to invoice matching, data validation, and approval processes, and do that completely automated. And then turn around and make the payments for you at the click of a button, whether it be by check, ACH, or virtual card. And then once again, send back the reconciliation data into your ERP system for you. What's that worth to you? And then to really top it off, what's it worth to you if I can pay you to do it?
That's where the cost savings go. It's like, listen, I have your AP specialist. We can automate for you from that standpoint. I like to think of it with my profession, that point too. It's like if you extend credit terms, I represent the most cost efficient way to ever do that. So if you haven't explored it, it's worthwhile. I think that makes sense for the both of us. So I think that
And there's some There's some tremendous potential out there too. I mean, it sounds like the rebates on a virtual card check or a virtual card transaction really don't add up. But if you look at it over time, I mean, I've got clients that are making anywhere from 250 to upwards of $480,000 a year on these rebates when you add them up over the course of annual usage. I mean, there's a substantial amount of cash left on the table by not utilizing this. I mean, I even saw a recent study where VersaPay had talked to over 200 different AP leaders, and 78% of them actually stated that they are trying to use virtual card more often for the fraud protections, for the depth of security, the richness of transactional detail, the fraud mitigation. There's just a litany of reasons. The ease of processing, vendors seem to be getting more in tune to it because of the ease of processing. Heck, we even process automatically for some of our larger clients on our vendor acceptance database. We'll process the transactions for them. So it ends up acting like an ACH for them. It's the wave of the future. I think we're all going towards that direction, whether we realize it or not. And there's a lot of benefits to be gleaned from it from your AP side.
Yeah, and I just think too, as far as if you sell to the Fords, the GMs, and the Stellantises of the future, you just simply put in the invoice the way that they request, get your money right away that quickly. That definitely makes sense from that standpoint. It's just so much more efficient to utilize this. And if you're not exploring this, especially right now when money's so critical in your operation, I think it's worthwhile to actually look into from that standpoint. So I think that's the closing. Anything you want to close with personally, Matt?
Oh, I'm available at any time. You can find me on LinkedIn at Matt J. Cannon and Cannon Business Solutions. Look forward to talking to you folks, and hopefully we can work out some solutions for you.
Great. And I wouldn't have Matt on here as well if I didn't vouch for him and his profession as well as the experience he brings to the table.
Thank you, sir.